for those who that just doesn't compute, and kind of how was that seemingly missed to that degree early on?
So
What can you tell them?
so at least from my perspective, and so the plan to set up, to get in position to demolish was to happen today, to set the stage. Actually putting the physical demolishment to happen today, I don't think that's ever. We're continuing to evaluate. If anybody wants to add to that, Chief?
Again, Jim Morse, Fire Marshal. So when we originally had evaluated the scene, we didn't have the indications, even from the state teams, from the canine dogs in there, that would make us proceed. We were not looking at instantaneously pulling that building down, but it's either going to come down on its own, which we do not want, but we also want to make sure it's in a controlled manner. We're receiving new information. The fire department pulled Lisa Brooks out of that apartment last night. That right there is an indicator that we need to go up there. That was a viable indication that we need to address this. So that's why we're moving forward with reevaluating, getting additional search teams in there to be able to do that. We had no other. We used all of our tools. We used all of Iowa Task Force 1's tools and technology to assess that, and that's why we're moving forward with the way we are now.
So,
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could speak more to why perhaps the dogs might have missed Lisa.
I don't know that we have I don't know that we have an answer to that. And you heard me say it. That question I'm getting a lot. I don't know. Believe me, though, I want to know. Okay? And so does everybody else. We want to know. All I can tell you is I'm committed to finding out. Sir in the back.
What is the name of the owner? Has the city been in contact with the owner? And is the owner under any criminal investigation as you put together that team?
I know the owner. He was on site Sunday. I saw him. I don't know if you want to speak any more about that.
So yes, the city has been in contact with the building owner. We are currently consulting with state agencies to figure out who is going to take the lead in this investigation. But at this time, we have not got to the point where we have determined if a criminal offense has occurred in order to initiate a criminal investigation. Regardless of what happens, there will be an investigation into how this happened. There must be.
Sorry, what's the owner's name?
Andrew Wold, W-O-L-D.
Thank you.
Okay, sir.
If this building, we just had the structural engineer talk about how bricks was falling off of the building. If this building was not, it was seen as unsafe, why were residents allowed to still in this? How did this building pass inspection?
Sorry, I'm just going to stay up here.
Yeah, I'll stay next to each other.
Apologize. So there was initial issues with the building. A structural engineer's report was provided to the city to outline the work that was done. It was determined that it was safe by the structural engineer, which was not hired by us. It was hired by the owner of the building, and they would be able to provide that report in order for us to make a determination to continue to occupy the building.
Okay. We'll go back and then we'll come back this way. So, yes, Jim.
So yesterday at the 7 a.m. press conference, we talked about how at that point there was no credible information that people were missing or unaccounted for. Then at 9:45 you sent the press release, and at that time it said there are people unaccounted for. Twofold question here. So was there new information provided after that press conference that allowed you guys to know that there were people who were unaccounted for? And then the second question, part of that, we're saying 5 unaccounted for, 2 probably in the building. Are the 2 part of that 5?
Yes, and that was part of the reason for our message yesterday morning at 7 o'clock is because we were asking for people to actually call in. We needed to have that investigative aspect and that additional information so we could start getting an accurate list. Information we had early on was conflicting, and so that's why we actually wanted to have people that had the best possible information, work closely with law enforcement over the last 24 hours so that we have a better idea of actually who is unaccounted for at this time.
In the back, ma'am.
Sorry, my
Oh.
other question was, are the 2 people who are probably in the building, are they part of that 5 unaccounted for, or are they in addition?
Yes, there are, a part of the 5, so 5.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got a two-parter too, Mike. First one is, it seems like the city's in a really tough position where it's having to weigh the safety of first responders against the how do you make, what factors do you use to make decisions like that in this case? And,
sorry.
I mean, that's gotta be,
I appreciate your understanding of that. So probably nothing more hard is understanding that we, especially they, want to do everything they can to be in there in every possible place, one of the victims, and I'll try and say this very generally, was in a place that is unbelievably dangerous to get out. Those folks didn't care about that. Their focus was to go and do that and save the life. Surgeons from this community were in the building exercising trauma surgery in the building, saving lives. So for me and our respective team, understanding that the effort of the first responders and other medical professionals to go and do everything they can, and the risk analysis for me and our respective leadership, knowing from our experts here and abroad, as you saw, people from across the state coming to advise us on the structural capability of that, can I allow that? I don't know that I still am struggling with that, right? But that's what we're doing. And through the great work of Chief Morris and the Mabus team, who are willing to do this, and we are working through that to do this, and our want is to do this. There is a continual evaluation and want to go in again. We are evaluating that, but you're right, that's me. And and our respective leadership to decide, if we're going, based on all the experts. So I appreciate you understanding that. Sir, in the back, you had one more, man.
Yeah,
And
does
then,
the city have a plan? What happens if the building comes down?
then we are going to do,
Control what?
yep, then we have talked in depth about being the respectful dignity piece, knowing that this could be a place of rest for some of the unaccounted. We are investigating and evaluating as best as we can with a lot of assistance from places other than here, and reaching out to other places that have experienced this to do what we can to be as respectful and dignified to what that is, a place of rest. That would then be the focus. And we are already working through that, sir.
The structural engineer report that the building owner provided to the city, how long ago was that provided? And will that, what engineering
Rich,
firm provided that report?
Good, Rich. Tell me.
So Rich Oswald, Development Neighborhood Services Director. So the engineering firm was Select Structural Engineering out of Bettendorf. So they actually provided two engineering reports within the last 6 months. One the end of January, then one here last week. What the city asked was that in January they let us know the building is structurally sound, or they would have to vacate it. They came back and said the building was structurally sound at that time, and they went with the belief that it was safe to have tenants in there. So we've asked that numerous times.
Okay, we'll go back this way and then I'll come back. I'm sorry, well, you didn't finish here.
Yeah, Mayor, do we have an accurate count as how many people live there, and we're just down to 5 and 2 unaccounted for? I mean, what number did we start with?
I think we're still working.
I think we're still working with you guys.
So our numbers were around 53 for the tenant list. We know that there's 80 units in that building. So again, we got 3 different sources of people who lived in that building, and that's where we cross-reference our lists.
So 53 is sort of a reasonable number at this moment, but we're still not quite sure?
Right, yes,
Okay, and 50 in the 5 from that 53?
yes.
And there have been that is, I will credit the police and chief's folks. We have been given multiple lists, multiple numbers, and the scrutiny to make sure we get this right has been an intense task that they've been involved in. So I'll go back to this way and we'll go back across again. Sir?
Hey, Zachary Smith, IPR News. My question's about the two reports filed in January and then was it 2 weeks ago? One, I wanted to see if the city's going to make those available, and then two, I wanted to know a little bit about what started that process. What was it exactly that incited those two reports to be issued?
Sure, so yeah, I believe we'll make those available, right? So what started was we had some veneer brick popping on the back of the wall. So then that's when our chief building official and building staff went in, and then they required the first report. The second report started with they had some more veneer brick falling, so we asked for another report.
And in response to the second report, I mean, was the city satisfied with what this structural engineer hired by the landlord to investigate? Was the city satisfied?
So the chief building official was satisfied with what the engineer requested the repairs and how the repairs were to be made.
It's a bit of a messaging question, so I hope you'll allow it. People out there feel like someone failed them. Did the city fail them? Did the owner fail them? Like, who failed them? Because they just think there's no way that this is not the result of at least one failure, and they're feeling.
So my hearts are out to them. I can only say, from my perspective, I think I can speak on behalf of the city. The responders, the people that do the work, we have city council folks here, staff, we do everything we can to try and ensure safety. We require things like engineering reports. As soon as something is identified, investigating to see that people are doing what they're supposed to do, i.e. what Mr. Oswald just said. We will continue to do that, and we will continue to understand what that is and do the best we can to move forward with whatever it is, whether it's handing everything over to an investigator so that an outside person is looking into whatever happened. We want that answer too, so we will continue to do it, and that's all I can.
But as their mayor, do you feel like the city failed them? When we're talking about these and they say it's pretty clear there were huge cracks in the wall. Like, they feel like they didn't need an engineer.
I totally understand what they're saying. We require engineers and experts to evaluate things, just like we require experts in other fields to evaluate things. We will keep after that, and we owe them moving forward what happened to do our best to get answers for folks. Mayor.
Some people are upset they can't retrieve their belongings. Is there any possible way to have first responders, other people retrieve those for them?
So I won't speak to belongings, but I know the question of pets has come up and others. We've worked with the Humane Society, are working with the Humane Society to identify all of that to the best of our ability, and Chief might be talking, but if, we fully understand if we go back in, and we're trying to do that, to work to get those things out. In belongings, I don't think we're going to allow individuals to go back into that dangerous situation.
Even first responders?
First responders might go back in, but first responders will be going back in to see if we can save lives.
Could somebody talk a little bit more about what a controlled demolition process would look like? Would that involve explosives or taking a building apart?
So no, as the fire marshal, I will not allow them to use explosives in a heavily populated downtown area. This would be a coordinated demolition, methodically. There's a lot of weight load on that rooftop there with chillers, air conditioning units, utilities, that kind of thing. So we are in the process of meeting with contractors to be able to basically disassemble that building and do it safely.
And do you have a timeline for that, of how long you want to continue potentially searching the building?
I do not. Again, this is fluid and flexible. This building shifted when we were operating in there, and each time we were in there, it shifted at some point. So we could walk out of this room right now, and that building could only have 20 minutes on top of it. So we need to evaluate what we see between the structural engineer, our technical rescue teams, and formulate the best possible way to strategically go in there.
Sir?
Very quick one, the 3 others out of the 5 who are unaccounted for, the 3 others, any hints or any idea of where they are if they're not likely to be in the building?
Yeah, so we're continuing that investigation piece. So the list that we had, some may have been an old tenant list. So we're checking to make sure that they're actually in that building. We have reason to believe they're in that building. So we're continuing that piece. And we'll continue to piece that until we can exhaust all measures.
Right across, okay, 1, 2, 3. Yep.
My question is about resident complaints again. It seems like from previous press conferences, it sounded like you guys were familiar with this property based on resident complaints. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so the City of Davenport, our rental inspection program, so any resident complaint would be investigated by a rental inspector. If something was found in violation or needed repair, they would send out an official notice and order of what needed to be fixed, and then that'd be followed up on until the building was in, whatever that repair was, in compliance. So being that size of a building, it undergoes a rental inspection every 2 years, so.
Jenna, and then,
Talking just back on the demolition aspect of it, would there be, and this might be too early to determine at this point, but would there be an effort to demolish it away from that pile of rubble so that you could then later go back into that pile of rubble to search for remains?
Larry Santos, structural engineer. You're going to start demolishing it. One of the most likely place to start demolishing that building is probably in the area of the debris pile, which unfortunately is the area of concern with respect to victims. So that there's concern about the building is close to an alley, close to adjacent buildings on the south side. So the contractor would have to take care not to damage any adjacent property or city or public.
John, and then I'll come back over here.
I think I heard 2 different things regarding the structural engineer report that Wool contracted with the Bettendorf firm. I heard earlier that the report was submitted and it was deemed structurally sound, and then I heard later that the report was submitted and it required additional repairs. What is there?
Sorry about that, I'll clarify. So in the original January report requested, so for that repair work, which was brickwork, they said the building was structurally sound for people to stay in. So that repair work was done under permitted, it was signed off on, and then just in May, we had a second incident that required a new structural engineering report. The permits were currently pulled, and they were currently making those repairs at the time of the collapse.
So neither of those reports claimed that it was structurally sound. Both reports stated that it needed repairs in order for it to be sound.
So stated it needed repairs, but stated the building was structurally sound for people to stay in. The work could be done with people inside the building.
Okay.
Sorry.
We'll go right to left again.
And this is back for the.
One more right to left.
I wanted to hear a little bit about kind of what it is that this report found, right? If it was deemed structurally sound, right, to habitable for people, I don't know, it raises some concerns about kind of like what the inspection process might look like, right? Can you give us a little bit more detail on kind of like why this was passed, right? Given that it did collapse this weekend, right?
Sure. So the current repairs being made at the time of collapse were not passed, right? They were still in progress. The repairs in January met what building code requires for repairs. They were inspected by our inspectors, our chief building officials, and those were passed. So to in-depth of what the reports say, I don't have them in front of me, so I don't want to misspeak on them. So I can get those to you and go from there, all right?
Get those to you.
I have 2 questions. Is it possible to do kind of a combo, like demolition while also continuing to search for people?
I can tell you from my perspective, with the knowledge I have, I do not see us doing a demolition with an active search at the same time. We will definitely have any recovery efforts will be part of a demolition, and that will be a priority as we move forward.
Amy, would you take a question? Are we talking?
You're okay with that?
Yeah,
we talked yesterday and you were pretty frustrated with not having any answers and not being able to speak to what was happening in the building. What is it today that changed your mind in support and throwing your support behind the city?
Okay, so I can't say my support is 100% behind the city. I can't say the support is 100% behind. All we want is Ryan to be respected. We want it to be taken and handled sensitively so that if, you know, I said earlier he loved Jesus, he's probably with the Lord, but he also could be, you know, divinely trapped. And that's what we're praying for. I just want the whole situation to be handled sensitively to that area, and whatever is the best means possible to extract that area, to see what's underneath of there, and to also preserve lives and injuries to other of our first responders or anybody else involved. It's a tough balance. It's life for life. It's a hard situation, you know. But what we ultimately want is them to find and recover Ryan. And I can't speak for Brandon's family, but I'm sure that's what they want to, and they want it to be a priority. I just would really hope that they would take the prior, you know, that put that as a priority to them to get it safe enough to go in and excavate that rubble to recover what's underneath of there and make the steps of the action plan in order that way. So it's can be as good of a win as possible. So that's where I stand. And they did explain a lot of things too that we didn't know. So.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mayor, two-part question. It's my understanding that before Lisa Brooks was found, that the building was gonna start being demolished this morning, is that correct?
No. The setup and staging of things was gonna start to be happening. I don't know that we have an exact timeline that the physical demolishment was gonna happen. There were things that have to happen. Permitting, staging, discussion, working, that obviously leads to a time and a date. I don't know what that is.
What made you guys comfortable enough to say in your email that demolition will begin, and that you acknowledge that you believe everyone was out of the building, and clearly
At the
that
time,
was not the case?
yeah, the information we had was,
Do you understand that potentially Lisa or these other two gentlemen that are potentially still in that building could have been killed by demolition?
we fully understand that. That's why it's not being demoed. We haven't demoed it.
But it was planning to be.
Okay, we haven't demoed it. We understood this our continuous evaluation of what to do or not to do happened in real time. Okay? You did not see anything moving towards that building.
In Florida, when the condo collapsed, it took 10 days before they decided to demo. Why were you guys so quick to make that decision?
We haven't demoed it. I understand you're homed in on that. We might have been saying we're going to
I'm going
demo.
off of your email that said.
Okay, well, I didn't send an email.
Mayor, I can speak.
Okay, I didn't send an email. We haven't demoed it. We understand that.
So when we come to demoing the building, it's a priority for us to figure out to do it safely. And that's the problem that we're running into is, I spoke about this before, we need this to be in a controlled manner. And we have used all of our resources, all of our technology, all of our tools to determine if there is any other life safety issues inside that building. Once we've determined that and we have no more indications or clues, then we need to start moving towards that. The building has not come down. As you can see, we didn't throw a bunch of heavy equipment in there and start ripping stuff down. We do not want that building to come down in an uncontrolled manner, because that is going to cause issues for both us as public safety and the community. We want to be able to safely take that building down. I can't stress that enough. When you have a building that is that unpredictable with the shifting and everything in there, we want to be safe about this, and we don't want any more of the community injured.
Anybody else? Matt?
Yeah,
Okay, you,
I had a quick question. I know you guys are still investigating and the cause of this is yet to be determined, but we've heard some reports that maybe a car hit the building or, you know, there's something that maybe triggered this. And I'm wondering if that's true or, you know, there's some speculation about maybe floodwaters undermined the building or something like that. Can you speak to any of those?
So on the initial dispatch, it did come in as a car had hit the building. That is not true. There was no car that hit the building.
What about the floodwaters? Is that something that's concerned you with so much water in the area over the last couple of months?
I did not see any indications of flooding in that area. No.
let's say Jenna, Maggie, and then we're done.
Two questions here. The first one, we know the name of one of the people unaccounted for that you believe is in the building, Ryan. Can you tell us who the other person is?
We don't have the name.
We'll get the names released when we can.
Okay, thank you. And then.
One more and then.
Come back to me, I'm sorry.
Can I just ask our question a different way? Because the email did say, I don't mean to drill down on this too much, but demolition was expected to commence in the morning. To a layman, and respectfully, we get there's a lot that goes into it that people might not know.
Okay.
That sounds like the building's gonna start coming down. So can I ask, did demolition plans change when Lisa Brooks popped out of her window last night and was rescued?
Demolition plans have continuously been evaluated.
Did they
So-
change from what you knew basically at noon yesterday when you sent that email?
So when we say demolition plans, when you start that, again, I just referenced, we're not gonna come in with heavy equipment and start pulling things off. It's methodically gotta get done. It could be hours or days depending on what we see, because when they start pulling units off the top of that roof and the building starts to shift, that's gonna change things. There's a lot of planning that has to go into place in order for us to do this safely. So we have to start the process, and by that is demolition planning is occurring. So
But it's a stark contrast from thinking there's no one in there to a woman waving out her fourth floor window. So did demolition plans change when it became very clear that there are people still in the building?
absolutely, there's new information that comes up. We had no indications from any of the responders that we had, any of our tools, any of the canines at that time. So at some point, we had to move forward. As this is fluid and flexible, we start moving to change once we had a new indication that there was somebody in the building. Hence the reason why we are talking with technical rescue teams and the structural engineer to figure the safest way to do another search.
Last one.
Do you have any idea of where in the building you'll be looking?
That will be determined on the consultation with the structural engineer and the technical rescue team.
One more, because you've been holding your hand up.
Thank
Then
you.
we're done.
Yeah. Do you guys have surveillance video of the actual collapse and when it happened? I know there are obviously several buildings in the area. Do you have that? Is the city reviewing it, and is that going to be made available?
Yes, we do have some video footage of the actual collapse itself, and absolutely, we have been reviewing it to try and determine exactly where, what, and why. And,
Will you release it?
yes, I don't,
Our intent, I don't know about timelines, our intent is everything we have will be given to, certainly the investigators and probably everybody else. I cannot commit to you when. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for covering this, I appreciate. Again, our hearts go out to everybody involved, especially the families of the unaccounted and the displaced. Please contact the Red Cross for any assistance anybody would like to give. Appreciate your time.